Hey guys, welcome to Art. Rocky and I wanted to say we missed you so much, and he wanted to be in this video because guess what? He misses being a star. He had a taste of the good life, and now he's like just an average dog now. He wants to be on YouTube all the time. So we're gonna start the best art project in all of fourth grade today. So we are gonna start our circuit paintings where we're gonna get to illuminate the landscape. You can kind of see. It has real lights in it. So we're going to learn how to build a circuit like you're learning in science right now. And we are going to get to add that to our pictures to make them illuminate. So today, all we're going to focus on is finding our wonderful inspiration for our background. That's all we're worrying about today. Next week, we'll worry about adding the foreground, which are going to be like trees or anything you want, and learning how to build the circuit. So today, we're going to go and explore and figure out how to make our best landscape. You guys ready to get creative? I'm super excited. Okay, see you soon. Okay, here are some great examples I found just doing a quick image search for nighttime landscape. You can look up different things if you want a galaxy, you can look up a galaxy or a beach. I do want you to notice the trees. They look like silhouettes. And that is what we're going to really focus on next week. So we're just working, that would be the foreground. All those trees and the birds are the foreground. We're not even worried about those yet. Just worry about the background. We of course want to think about if we're going to have a cool color background or a warm color. And these are just quickly reminding you what those two palettes look like. Okay, here's some wonderful examples of student-made inspirations, and I love that these were made in our art studio, and I think they did a great job. Like I said, you don't need to just focus on maybe doing a landscape that's in nature. You can do a city landscape or even an imaginary one like this awesome unicorn. So think about what you want, and we're going to talk a little bit more. Okay, guys, so before we get started on our landscapes, we need to talk about a few things. I really want you to research and find something that you're inspired by. It could be the beach, it could be a cityscape, anything that is at night or sunset, just to make a beautiful piece of artwork. Also, you need to think about what is going to be illuminated because you're going to have to make a circuit. So if it's in a big circle, it's going to be hard because we have to run a copper tape, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit, copper tape to make the circuit. So you're going to have to do that. Think about if you have one down here, and you can only do 5. If you have one down here, one up here, one up here, one up here, one up here, it's going to be really hard to hit those. So you might want to think about doing them in a line or have them scattered so you can be able to run that circuit. Also, we're going to show you the colors of our LEDs because that might change what your ideas are. So we have a nice yellow. I'm going to make sure I have it correct so it'll light up. So I know I have it negative and positive on the right side. So that's a yellow, which could be kind of cool to definitely do a light. We have a red that the red's hard to see on here, but it could be really good on a cityscape. Or if you want to, I had somebody do an ambulance one time, or Willie B did the William Bright Stadium, and they used these for Gamecock colors, which turned out awesome. Like I said, this doesn't have to just be a nature landscape. It can be a city landscape. White. I often use the whites myself just because it looks really cool doing a starry background on that. Blues might be hard to think about what you could do with those, but I've seen you could do a police car. Anything with a blue light, kind of be cool maybe if it did out underneath the sea, and you kind of have that one going. So just thinking about that. And last but not least is we do have green. So think about green. Somebody did use the red and green, and they did a Christmas tree, which even though it's not Christmas at this time, doesn't mean that we cannot make Christmas. I don't see why not. But I really want you to think really hard about this background. We are not doing the foreground. The foreground would be if I was doing a forest background, which I'm going to do in a second to show you a little bit. It would be background would be my sky, and the foreground will be the trees. And since it's a silhouette, which means it's black and shadowed, we're going to use ink later. We have to let the background dry before we do the foreground. And that's what we're going to work on next week. That and figuring out where we're going to put our awesome lights. So let's get started. I am going to do a background of a forest. It's going to be my foreground, and my background is going to be a night sky. So if I'm doing a night sky, I'm going to think about using cool colors, which we all know are blues, kind of greens, anything like that, purples. If I was going to do a sunset or a sunrise, I would be thinking about warm colors, which I would say reds, yellows, pink, orange. So I'm going to get some blues out, and I have to remember I can use the techniques I've used before we learned this year, which is wet on wet, which is what we did when we did our wonder portraits. So when we did a wet, and then we put paint down, and then we add more watercolor to it, it makes it go kind of crazy, and I'll show you how I do that in 1 second. So all I'm focusing right now is on the sky. So I'm going to use some dark colors. I'm going to come use, I have a navy blue over here, so I'm just going to kind of use. Okay, so did I do wet on that one? I definitely did not, because I didn't wet this. I'm going to wet the paper first and see how it reaches in. And maybe I want a purple in there, so I'm going to add a little blue and purple, more of an indigo, and see how it's going to spread to the colors. If I want to do it that way, I can. If I want to go back and add, because I kind of want it to look like a cool galaxy background, which would be, a galaxy would be really fun to make. Then I would definitely want to do a wet on wet, which I'm just adding colors to. Like I said, I'm not worried right now about the foreground, which would be if I was doing a desert, the cactus or the stones, or the trees, like a palm tree in the background, or a dolphin jumping, or in a unicorn. The unicorn is the foreground. So all I'm doing is I'm going to add different blues and some purples to this. It's more of a dark blue for a night sky. And I'm just adding water to make it swirl and look kind of cool. See how it's looking like a galaxy? All I'm doing is adding more water and more paint. If it's wet, I know it's going to bleed into it. See? It's pulling it already down. We know that if it's a dry piece of paper and I use that color, it's not going to work out. That it's just going to be a stroke. And I want to really think about what kind of thing I want my paper to be. If I want movement, I can have movement with my brush strokes. It can look really awesome. I'm going to add, let's see. Okay, if you guys notice, my watercolor paints right here are in Mandarin, and I don't read Mandarin, and I don't have the, I usually have a sample next to me, then I can look. So I'm kind of going by my eye to figure out exactly what colors they are. So I'm kind of winging it, which is kind of cool. So what I'm going to do is finish up this background, and then I'm going to focus on, that's all I'm going to focus on this week. Next week, I'll focus on making the foreground, which are going to be trees, and I'll show you that in a little second. And I'm going to also focus on where I'm going to place my stars, or something that I'm going to illuminate. That makes sense? Okay, go get started. Figure out the most amazing landscape to be inspired by, and I cannot wait to see them next week. And the fun part is going to happen. Woohoo! Okay, see you soon. Psych. I just wanted to show you more of the wet on wet so you can kind of see what I am doing. Make sure that paper is wet before you do it so it's not just some brush strokes on the paper, because it's not going to look like that if you just do regular strokes like we do for painting in something. If you notice, I'm dabbing a lot. I don't ever kind of just push it barely down on the paintbrush so the color and the water gets taken away from it. I'm also going to show you next how I use, since I have some pools of color, I'm going to use a paper towel, or you can use a Kleenex or whatever you have in class to kind of gently dab. You don't want to take too much color off, just gently dab the pools of water. Okay, finally, I just wanted to show the circuit on the back to see what it looks like. So you can have an idea of how you're going to make your lights go, because your lights have to touch both sides, both parallel sides, the top and the bottom, to be able to be lit. So think about that as you are creating your background. Awesome! Okay, see you next week.